So in our previous tutorial, we were looking at 2-factor, which is a WordPress plugin that allows you to do 2FA, and it's written by the WordPress.org contributors. It's the one that I recommend for most use cases. And that includes use cases where you're just the administrator, or it's just your company and you have a limited number of administrators. Even if you're like operating a WooCommerce site, I still tend to recommend that one. But it wouldn't then let your WooCommerce users, for example, have MFA, not without some working. It also doesn't enforce 2FA on other people. We talked about a little bit of using my MU plugin, which is a little bit of a hack. Instead, if you're in a scenario where you want to enforce 2FA across lots of people, or if you do not have control over the administrators, for example, there is a SEO company who has users on your site and you want to get them on board with 2FA, but you have no stick. You can't physically make them enable their 2FA. So what do? Well, you use a different plugin. And the one I would recommend in that scenario is the one we're looking at today, which is WP-2FA by MailerPress. Now, we're going to be looking at the free version, and we're going to start off by going to the configure 2FA settings. Now, that in itself is the biggest difference between the two plugins. You see, the MailerPress plugin, so WP-2FA, has the ability to enforce across different rules. Now, the free version of the plugin only supports the Authenticator app and email, which is fine for us and at the moment. We might go into some of the premium ones in a different video because it's quite cool, some of the stuff it can do. But for the free version, most people, it will be absolutely fine. On the whole, you're either going to choose one of two things. You're either going to choose the Authenticator app, in which case you're going to, just like we did with the 2-factor, enable backup codes because we'll want those, or we will disable the backup code and we'll go with email. Now, you could choose to set the all free. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I think that for most people, it's just simpler to set the email unless you are going down the route where you're giving everybody a authenticator app. So we're going to set it for email for now. And we're also going to tick this box here, which is allow users to specify their email address choice. And it defaults to yes, and we're going to switch it to no. Now, what we're doing is if you said yes, then the user could say, well, I want the authentication emails to go to this specific place. There are plenty of use cases where we might want to do that. But if we've configured everything properly and we're making sure we're enforcing that only corporate email addresses are being used for users on the site, we do not want them sending off emails to somewhere else. Nor do we want a bad actor somehow managing to send it to evil.com. So we're going to say, no, actually, the WordPress user can only send the authentication codes to the address associated with the user. The other option we're going to do is we have this choice of being able to specify who this is enforced through by default. Now, if we were to click do not enforce for any user, well, that's the same as the 2-factor authentication plugin that we looked at before. Not ideal. We might as well just use 2-factor. Instead, what we can do is either set it to all users. There's nothing wrong with this. In fact, in the perfect world, this is exactly what we'd do. But let's say you've got an e-commerce site and you actually do not want to put too much friction in there. Your people who are registering they're just going to not be able to deal with this. In which case, we would select only specified users and roles. And you can, as you can see here, just add the roles that you want. You can also just be a dick and say Bob Smith is a user and he will be enforced, and that's it. We're not going to be mean to Bob. So we're going to take that out. We're just going to use administrator and editor. Now, the next bit down here is, do you want to exclude any users or roles? I don't ever suggest that you exclude a role unless you're going to somehow say, I want to enforce all roles and I want to exclude just WooCommerce customers. That's an option. So that's not a bad way of doing it. And that also means that if any custom roles sneak in, so like your SEO manager role, for example, doesn't get lost in there. But one user I would always recommend putting into the exclude the following users is the user who's setting this up right now. Now, you're going to take them out in a bit, but what you want to do is have everything set up and then remove that user. Now, the reason to do this is if there was anything that was to go wrong, this user would be the first user who would be affected. And of course, then they wouldn't be able to get out. You see, the second you save this, it's going to enforce two-factor authentication. So you're going to get this pop-up box that says, hey, enable your two-factor authentication. Now, if for some reason that doesn't work, you are locked out of the site, which is awkward. So instead, what we want to do is just exclude ourselves, and then we'll go and add it ourselves afterwards. After all, if we're setting this up, we are all on board with the idea that we should configure it for ourselves. So we will go ahead and configure it later. You will. Small side note, administrators are the worst at setting up 2FA. Preach it. Yep, absolutely. Use it? Not so much. So if you do put yourself in as an exclusion because you're setting this up, remember that that's a thing you're doing temporarily. You need to remove yourself and actually enable it once you know everything's configured and set up okay. The next option is when should you do this? Now, my preference is to have it set to users have to configure 2FA straight away. Not least because I think it's very cool that when you hit that save button, anybody who is currently logged in will get a prompt saying, you need to enable 2FA. That's cool. I like that. But also, it just means that it's done. Users complain less. There is no time for a user to be worried about things. You can give users a grace period. So you can say after X number of days, you will be in a position where we're either going to lock you out if you haven't done this, or we are going to not let you access anything but your user page unless you configure things. Now, the maximum you can set this to is 10 days. I personally would have liked this maybe to 14, but it's set to 10. And it's important to understand that for those 10 days, most users are going to put it off if they can. And on the 10th day, they're all going to complain and say they would like a grace period. So this is the reason why I don't personally do this, but there might be some corporate reasons why you might have to. If you do have to, I really like the fact that you can show an admin notice. And I also quite like the fact that you can like have a whole page notification. This is like, this is coming, you must do this. The other thing that's quite cool is you can actually set it to either let them access their user page, or you can have it actually, you are locked. You now need to go and sit on the naughty step. Personally, I'd set it to the do not let them access the dashboard. Just let them configure it and carry on. These other bits are pretty niche. I'm not 100% sure why you do a thank you for setting up your 2FA, but maybe you are running a thing where people are entered into a prize draw if they enable 2FA. Then you might want them to redirect. That could be cool. The other things on here that are very niche but might be useful to you is enabling for front end. So if you are running a membership site or something like WooCommerce, then you can click yes here, and then you can put in the various settings on the front end of the site so the user is never redirected to the back end. This is really cool. This means that you can use WP-2FA for managing users who do not normally have access to the dashboard. That's great. The other thing is, should users be able to disable 2FA? That's a personal choice of whether you want that. So let's click save. And then if we go and have a look at the users, and we're going to go and look at Bob again. And I've already set Bob up, and Bob is set with his email, and I've actually already configured it. But let's reset the configuration. So his 2FA has been removed. Now, if we come out and we log out, and we log in as Bob, we can see that we can come in, and we're currently not being asked to do anything, but we can come down here and we can configure 2FA. When we come down and configure the 2FA, we can see that we've got use my email. And if we'd had the option where they could specify whatever email they wanted, this would be showing here. But because we've said, no, you must use this email, you click there. Then you say, I'm ready. It sends you a verification code. So this is different to when with the 2-factor plugin, which you would only get, you would never actually check to see if the email was valid. So when you logged out and you logged back in and your email didn't work, well, it doesn't work. This is a bit more of a nicer interface, I guess. So now if we do that, we can pop back in and we're going to put the verification code in and we're going to validate and save. Bro. There we go. And we'll just delete that out. So now this is reconfigured up. Everything is set up on for Bob here. And we're going to go out and then we're just going to log back in. Hi, Bob. And this time, just like 2-factor, we are sent, hey, you have to put in a 2FA code because it's now been all configured and set up. Here we go. We come back in. We click on there. We put in the verification code. Unlike the 2-factor one, we also have to then click login. In we come. And that is it. There are lots and lots of other features inside the WordPress plugin. So you can configure on much more granular level, and there is also the premium plugin as well. Do I recommend it? Personally, I think the UI is a bit clunky. I don't think the login field sequence is quite as clean as the 2-factor. And generally, I think the 2-factor works for the vast majority of people. So if I was, as my first choice, I'd go with 2-factor. But if I'm in a use case where either I'm trying to deal with WooCommerce users, e-commerce sites, or where I have administrators that I cannot trust to do things correctly, then WP-2FA is the route that I would take.